What is up, everyone? It's the guy here, and welcome to another episode of Themindhere. This is my bi-weekly podcast where I provide updates about my YouTube channel, discuss what I do behind the scenes, and talk about other things that come to mind. It also serves as a way to keep myself accountable and externally motivated to get my work done. If you're interested in how I make my music and videos, feel free to take a look at previous episodes. Welcome to all of you who are here for the first time. If you like my content and want to see more, please consider subscribing. All right, let's start this off by talking about the two videos that I released since the last episode. This episode's going to be a bit long because I have quite a bit to cover, so let's dive right into it. The two videos that I released, they were part of my series called The Think. Now, this series, I started this a while back. I had the idea of what the series is about is I research some topic that I'm interested in. Anything, it could be anything. In this one, I did the topic of systems thinking. So I do some research on this, and then I sort of just make an educational video out of it. Like the typical educational content creators, I talk about the concepts behind it, and then I also go give some examples, have some of my own graphics in there, animations, and then at the end I wrap it up by talking about why I think it's important and why I covered it. So it's just a way to get me to really solidify some of the concepts that I've been thinking about in the background, the things that I don't really have classes for in college, but I want to look deeper into because I think this is something that I want to explore and that will help me in the future. So this is a good way for me to practice a whole lot of different things. My researching skills, my ability to explain things, and also just more of my speaking abilities, and various of other things, not to mention actually learning about the topic. So that's why I started it. And I started it with an explainer video a while back. However, I didn't get into it because I guess it might have been premature because I was still developing how I was going to do my music videos and all other aspects of the channel. So it wasn't as refined as I would have liked it, and I just really didn't touch it until now, where I feel more comfortable getting into this and starting this. So that's why I made two videos. I started it up again this week, this series, and the first video I made was an explainer video. This is just explaining the concept behind this series, sort of an update to that original one that I posted. So I made that one unlisted because this one's an update to that, and it's supposed to replace that one. But it's still in the same playlist. You can watch it if you want. And the second one I made was the first long-form educational The Think episode out there, and oh my gosh. The process of making this, I found a much deeper respect for educational content creators, because the process of making this video, this video is about 26 minutes, and it took so much time and effort to make. And even now, I'm very proud of what I was able to produce for the first video. There's still quite a bit I can definitely make improvements to. But the important part here is I got started on it, so now I can use that and sort of refine it from the next one and really take leaps and bounds from there. But the process of making this, I've just found so much respect for educational content creators, because the process, you start with, you have to educate yourself first, right? In order to educate others, you have to know the topic here. So you have to do the research there. That's the first part, and that's not always easy. If you just do normal research on your own, you know how hard that is. But then once you've gotten that research, you have to create a model and be able to understand it in a way that you can not only understand it yourself, but be able to appropriately put it into a video format, right? So something that you can present to others in a video fashion. So the writing of the script part is also pretty difficult. And of course, you're gonna have to go back and forth with your sources, the notes you took on it, and also your video script, just to refine things. And how I approached this was I first did the basic research on all of the concepts. That's got to happen first. You got to know what's going on in order to make a video about it, right? And then through that, I take notes on it. But then with those notes from the individual sources, I then have something in my live operating system that is a knowledge vault, which I keep all sorts of concepts there, and I sort of aggregate everything about that concept into a more refined, detailed notes about it. So taking the notes from the sources, I put it into that to really form and solidify the concepts out. This isn't the script yet, though. This is just something that I can look back on and remind myself about this concept. But so throughout that process, it's back and forth between my notes, my original sources, and the knowledge vault there. Once I have that solidified, I then moved on to making the script, which is transferring the important nuggets and the topics and the ideas that are that I can take into a video format appropriately and put that into the script. So script writing is another part. You have to be a little bit creative there. It's not just the researching synthesis, but you also have to make it into a video form. So that part also takes significant effort and takes quite a bit of creativity. So again, that's where another aspect of the respect for educational content creators, especially good ones. And then from there, you have to be able to make the video, right? So this video, unlike the previous videos I've done, for example, this, the Themindhere series, I take these in usually just one shot. And since I'm talking basically off from the top of my head, thinking on the spot, I don't need to do as many cuts or rehearse the content that I need to talk about. It just sort of flows out, right? So it's, from a video taking perspective, it's a lot simpler with these podcast episodes compared to something like the Think. And with my music videos, the video part is not necessarily the difficult part. It's the music and making the thumbnail. Other than that, the video part is pretty simple. So with this, I got to experience a lot more of video editing in there, which I guess I haven't had a full experience of before, since the content I've made before hadn't required that. So a lot of experimenting and a lot of refining can be made, but you have to be able to put all those pieces that you've recorded together, making sure all the voiceovers fit good onto the video, and collecting all the B-roll and all that. So with this, I guess with this series, I really needed to look into where I could get some good B-roll from, so that it can just help make the video a little better to watch. So I needed to find sources for that, and I needed to come up with a whole concept, a process of making this. With all my videos, I've been able to, once I've gotten a few of these out, I've been able to make a process so that I can go through sort of a checklist, but basically a guide for how I'm going to make the videos. And that really helps out to make it consistent. So with this new series, this sort of new series, it's basically a new start on it. I needed to create that process. So a lot of heavy lifting needs to be done with the first few episodes. But after these episodes come out, they're already out. But after I make these, it's then a lot easier, since I've already made the first one. So I've got some experience behind it, and I also created the process, the list behind it, so that I can recreate it a lot easier, and I know what to look for in my next videos. But so throughout this whole process, it took a lot of time, and because I did things that were somewhat new with the video editing, a bit more creative script writing, and a lot of that, I also used my newly learned Python knowledge to use Matplotlib and animation to make these animated graphs for this, because I thought that was really cool and appropriate for the systems thinking video. So if you're interested in that, go check that out. I thought it was pretty cool. I can, of course, improve on some of that, and the timing and the animations or whatnot. But I thought that was a cool start. I could use that in the future if there are plots that I can put into the video. So there's things that like that slowed me down. Well, that took a lot more time than I anticipated, right? With these, with new things, it's sort of like R&D where you have to just invest a lot of time into it, and in this case, not that much money, but with real R&D, a lot of resources go into just experimenting and finding out what's the best, right? But once you're done with that, you then have the vast knowledge that you've created from this experience to be able to apply it in the future. So overall, I'm very proud of what I was able to create with this first video. Hopefully you guys enjoy it and maybe learn something from it and provide some feedback so that way I can improve future videos. I plan to make more of these, although I'm not going to be, I don't have another topic planned just yet. That's something I need to look into since my list of projects are starting to run low with YouTube and just other projects elsewhere in my life, so I need to take a look and plan for that. But overall, this process has been quite a journey to make this. So yeah, I'm very proud of these two pieces that I was able to create. Now, of course, that's not the only thing that I have. Once I'm finished with these the Think videos, my next project that I was working on that I sort of already started was the Vocaloid cover of, I'm going to say this right now, Nande Monaya. There we go. Probably didn't pronounce it right. I said all the letters though. Okay, so that cover, I'm going to be working on that from now on. That's going to be my next priority to release. And that one, some updates, I did make some progress on it the last week. So right after the episode, I worked on that, but then I decided to full focus on the Think to get that out. But now that that's out of the way, I can now refocus onto this music project so that I can make sure I dedicate enough time to get a quality project out. And the last episode, I talked about some ideas behind it, and I've decided that I'm going to more focus on the Vocaloid tuning aspect of it, and I'm going to borrow a remix by Max Own of Non Demonaya so that I can practice. So with the remix, I don't need to make sort of my own arrangement, melodies, that kind of stuff. I can borrow what they've done. However, there's no instrumental version of it, so I'm not just going to take the instrumental and slap some Vocaloid onto it. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the Vocaloid portion, so that's the aspect that I really can experiment and refine my tuning abilities. But then with the making of the remix, I'm going to sort of start from scratch to make all the synths, the basses, and collect the drums and do the mixing of the entire remix. So it's sort of a remix of a remix. I'm not going to change the remix too much, other than towards the end they do something unique with how it's done. There's no key change. I'm going to implement that key change from the original song, but what this does, I'm going to try to replicate it, and what this does is it'll help me practice my skills for making these various parts for an EDM sort of arrangement, like making these synths and doing the mixing, collecting the drums, all of that. That way I don't need to focus on the making of the arrangement, but I can more focus on some of the sound design aspects, which I think I need improvement on, and I thought I was lacking. So with that, I'm able to do more practice and make a piece that's good, high quality, but I also can put some of my own flair into it without like just blatantly copying, but also having some kind of structure I can move forward with, since I don't think I'm at the stage where I can make a proper EDM song just from scratch like that. So more practice would be helpful. But of course, after putting all that effort into the Think videos, I took a break this weekend. So by the time this comes out, I'll probably already have finished the break. but I took this weekend a little light to reset myself and get back so that I'm ready to get back into working and focusing on this project to get this out hopefully by the next episode. So that way I can prepare myself mentally and not get burnt out. And as I reflect on these projects that I've accomplished and the projects I plan to do, I've taken a look and I have to remind myself that the whole purpose really of this channel is to develop myself, all while making content that might be of interest to people to see this whole messy development process. The point is not to create a project for the sake of the project, but more so that I can develop skills, and the sort of side effect is just having a good project that people can look at. It should be more about the journey, and that's something that I have to keep reminding myself of, because it's really easy to focus on getting the project out, but if you focus on the project too much, then you start to get into a rhythm, a specific order, and it's good if you want to consistently make production products, but if you're experimenting and you're constantly improving, that's not going to happen, and if you stay stuck in some routine, then you're not really improving or experimenting. So that's something I have to keep reminding myself of. So with all of these projects, although I really want to make high quality content, I also know that my skill level sometimes aren't not there yet, and I just need to get it out and keep iterating to be able to improve. I can't just expect something superior and high quality, something that a veteran would create just from my first videos. So that's something I have to keep reminding myself of. So with projects like these, for example, after the Think videos that I've made, I'll likely take a pause from actually making anything and focus a little more on my skills involving maybe the process, the video editing process I could get better at, practice with some of that. I can also practice with some of the software that's involved with that and maybe improve some animations, just get things more refined and build my base up. Also practicing maybe some of my research techniques or something like that. So build up that back end and come out with the next time, so that the next time I come out with a video that is vastly better, it might seem almost like a different video, but that's because of the improvement process. So with every project now, after I finish, I'm going to take a little pause from going on to the next project to work on some of more of the fundamental skills. So for example, after I release this music project, I'm going to likely take a little break and work on some various sound design aspects, maybe some more specific tuning aspects for the Vocaloid vocals, and some mixing, mastering skills there. So that way, the next time I produce a project, it'll be something that it'll seem more like a step change, and I'll make some more steady progress. If I keep continuing doing one project after the other, I get into more of a production mode, and then I sort of stop iterating. I just want to get the project out, and at that point it sort of defeats the whole purpose of why I started this channel of improvement. It's not necessarily to get content out, which of course that's the sort of whole thing behind YouTube, right? You want to be able to get content out so people watch it and subscribe, but that's not my ultimate goal, and I need to remind myself of that, because so often the YouTube environment is you can just get some content out and get people engaged, get people subscribing and liking. But I need to sort of pull back from that every once in a while and say, okay, what's the whole point of this? And take that and build everything else off of that. And just personally throughout this process, I've started to develop I've been looking into developing a new sort of mindset into how I look at the world and refine it a little bit. And I've decided that I want to take a more humble but fearless approach to life and how I walk through this journey. And the reason why I say that is because I think The Dunning-Kruger effect is something that is quite dangerous that I've probably fallen into that I want to avoid. So taking that humble path hopefully gets me past that Dunning-Kruger curve, which if you haven't heard of that, that's basically when you start out learning a new topic or a new idea, a new process, your confidence in your ability skyrockets way past your actual abilities. It's that hump of where you think you're competent, but you really don't know what you don't know at that point. So you think you're competent, but you don't, and then a lot of errors can come into play there, and you can almost come off as arrogant at that point. So that is a point I want to avoid, and taking a more humble path is something that I am looking into to make sure that I get past things like that. So with other various aspects, I don't fall into production mode, because if I get confident in my abilities, then I won't have really look into an incentive to go and change that, right? Go into improve that, and so that way. I don't want my progress to stall because I think I'm competent, right? So I want to get past that, and that humble mindset I am looking into hopefully will be a good way to move forward. And the fearless aspect is I shouldn't fear being just getting my confidence punched out and realizing, oh shoot, I have so much I need to learn, right? Because quite often you don't know what you don't know in an area. You might think you know all of this, but your unknowns are unknown, so that there's a lot you don't know, and sometimes that can be daunting, but sometimes it's easy to ignore that and think you know a lot, right? So the fearless aspect is to go explore that and be fine with knowing all the unknowns you don't know, because it can be easy to just ignore what you don't know, and then from your perspective you'll be like, oh, I know the stuff that I don't know is very little, and I know the stuff that I know is a lot. But if you don't know what you don't know and you don't explore that, then your overall knowledge and experience, expertise is going to be very limited, despite your high confidence in that. So just being fearless and able to explore that, and being willing to make mistakes, being willing to be the first one to talk and say something, I feel like that's going to be something that is beneficial, something that will help me in the future. And of course, with making mistakes and all of that, it's not about just consistently making mistakes, right? Because once you've discovered something, once you've discovered the mistake in an area, your subsequent mistakes that you make, if they're repeats, then it becomes more of a decision to make that mistake. So it's important to learn from it and improve. That's why you need to be constantly improving, but also just not be afraid to sort of fail in the process. So that it's not really a different approach, because I've sort of had that mindset previously, and it's not a radical shift in that mindset, but the ability, it's sort of a refinement of it, and the ability to take that and implement that is something that I'm looking into. Just being able to, on some level, reminding myself that this is the path that I want to take, and moving forward with that, making sure my actions align with it. So I guess it's almost more of a realignment, but that's something that I'm looking into to help me with this process of moving forward, and just constructing a better myself for the future. But speaking of mindset changes, though, I've recently, since the last episode, I've watched a video by Simon Sinek. He's a great motivational speaker, and he talks a lot about innovation in society and how people should approach life. And one of the things that really caught me, that I realized that I was modeling wrong, that I was doing wrong, was that for leaders, leadership is not an individual sport. It's something where you have to collaborate and work together with, right? And that leaders also need like a safe space to be. And I've always I've always taken the more of the individualistic route. I've always been doing things personally and getting things done because on some level I can trust myself to be able to get things done in a satisfactory way. And with one person, it's quite easy to make rapid changes and to move forward. But I've realized after the video that I've taken the approach a bit too extreme of the single person approach, and I should really be looking to collaborate with other people and taking other people's advices, conversing with other people and working together to create a synergistic relationship and moving forward in a more collaborative way instead of a just seeing more personal and individualistic mindset. And one thing I realized from this video is, I guess, an attitude that I've taken is that for a good chunk of what I do, I've almost taken like a getting permission from other people to do things sort of mindset whenever I'm working in a group. But I've realized that instead of asking for permission, what I'm really doing when when I'm asking other people about what they think is more of seeking advice. So I'm not asking permission to do something, I'm seeking advice, and that advice is something I can or cannot, or I can or can decide not to incorporate into my actions. That's, I feel like, a more healthy way to incorporate other people's advices. To not see it as almost getting permission, getting social approval to do something, but more of taking advice from other people. That way, I'm not obligated to do it. It's not something that will be something forced, and I'll be more willing to listen to other people. That way, it's a better collaboration process. So that is something. That's something that caught me. I'll link it in the cards, the video that I watched, and maybe you'll learn something from that too, or feel inspired in some way. But that was something that I felt like sharing, that I don't really have the concept solidified just yet, but I felt something that was special, and I felt like that was something that I can improve on. So that's something that I just wanted to share, and hopefully you guys will enjoy it as well. All right, now it's time for our one question AMA of the episode. And this episode, we have a new person with a question. So welcome, Asav. Thank you so much for the question. And thank you for joining the community. So Asav's question here is regarding politics on a local scale. He asks, do you believe that the average person is really equipped with the knowledge to understand policy? We're facing a money issue at my old high school, and the common parental consensus is the school board uses difficult jargon and financial terms we can't understand to get their way. I personally feel like this is a defeatist attitude and that the people who are attending the voting sessions shouldn't be voting as they aren't educated enough, although Google searches can answer their questions. All right, so this is quite a deep topic. I'll have to take a look and sort of dissect that question and answer a bit, but thank you so much for the question. So this is regarding the overall concept here. I'm going to take our overarching view here first, is that I think this is about local politics, right? How would you engage in local politics? Because if you're in the US, you've been hearing about the national elections for like the president and Senate seats and House seats, right? That stuff that seems super important. But if you really think about it, and this might be a little bit from a libertarian bias, but the federal government has a control and has influence over where the nation as a whole is heading, but on a local level that really doesn't affect you too much. The local policies are what really are the more tangible aspects that you can control, and especially with a governance system of the United States where there's emphasis on states' rights and being able to differentiate locally with laws and other aspects. With a lot of local governance involved, local governments and policy is something that is actually pretty powerful and that I feel like is quite underrated, especially with a democratic system like this. So on some aspects, I don't know if people appreciate that enough, and that's not something against people who don't appreciate it. It's just quite easy to get wrapped up with the high level federal elections and all the national drama because it'll affect everybody. So then people get really emotional and really worked up about it. When if you take a step back, you realize that the national level, the national governments, they don't have as much influence in this country, at least, as you might think. Local governments, state governments, local businesses, and just how the community decides to act is more significant than what the national government says in some ways. Right? So being able to sort of reframe the idea of instead of taking your issues and shoving it into a candidate and sending them off to the national government, instead working with your local peers and creating a local environment where you can see that action take place. That's something that I feel like has been underestimated, especially with, I guess, the hyperconnectivity of just being able to see everything on a more national scale. It's almost come back to bite us because then you think of everything in national terms, you then take it up to the highest possible power, highest possible authority, without realizing that the local authority also is important, especially in a more democratic system like this. So that is something that I feel like is a good mindset shift that could help in the aspect. And regarding with local people being able to do policy and all of that, that I feel like is something that needs to be more educated. And with regarding something like the political or the jargon that's being used on the school board, for example, things like that, there's two parts to it. The first part is they could really be just using a lot of jargon to misguide or confuse and almost discourage people that aren't inside to make decisions. That could be a factor, and that's not something to be disregarded of. But then it's important to be able to educate the people, the voting members, to get them to understand some of the jargon, to be able to have someone explain it to them, and to be able to get people to sort of educate them about local politics. That way they can develop the skills they need to do the research they need to understand some policies, right? And even if you don't understand policy, I feel like you can if something's too much jargon, you can probably have the community ask, okay, we don't understand what's going on clearly here. Please write it out in a more, I guess, less jargon filled way so that the broader public can understand, right? Because even though the school board, I guess, they make decisions, right? You have a body of authority that makes decisions. If it's a democratic system, the people really have the control here. If everyone that's the voting members decides, like, you know what, we don't understand this, we're not going to approve stuff, etc., then the authoritative body will have to listen to them, right? So with regards to that, I think that it shouldn't be that they shouldn't vote, that the people who aren't educated shouldn't vote, but we should educate these members of society to better be able to improve the democracy, right? It's not that we're going to remove or discourage other people from voting, because that just defeats the whole point of a democratic system. But instead, we should look into educating everyone about how it goes, and not educate about specific policies, like this policy does this, you should vote for this policy, but more of a broader, how would you handle a democracy, how would you vote in a democracy? And that sort of broader education about how you would approach and that mindset shift is something that I preach about quite a bit, and that I look into and I constantly constantly find people that talk about it, because you can go and talk about each individual policy, how you should approach this policy, where you should get research from that, but that knowledge doesn't carry over to other policy issues. If you take a more fundamental look and gain that fundamental knowledge, the knowledge that can apply to various other places, that might even apply beyond governance and into other areas of your life, with dealing with interpersonal issues and all of that, then you don't need to memorize or know as much, but you can sort of derive on your own other aspects based off of more fundamental knowledges. So looking for fundamental education and knowledge about these issues is something that I feel is important. And it's the issue with fundamental knowledge, there's not as much concreteness with how it should be taught. And that is a difficult aspect, because it's not as if you can go into a course about there aren't that many courses about more fundamental aspects, whereas there are quite a few about individual topics and aspects, right? So the ability to take a step back and really understand the process, and just understanding the process and how it's supposed to work, that is something that I feel like everyone should be able to take part in, because I really do think that the democratic process of getting people, the constituents that are affected, to make decisions is something that is critical. But being able to be a member that knows how to work the system is something that is a skill that I frankly think that is not being taught well. And that is something that we should teach, instead of taking the idea of, if you don't understand, then you shouldn't vote. It should be more of, how do we get more people to understand, right? So bring more people into the democracy and welcome people with open arms, instead of culling out the crowd and only taking the very few that do understand, right? So that's how I take that. That's how I'm going to answer that question. I'm not sure if I answered it directly, but there are some ideas that I think that can answer that indirectly. So hopefully that answers your question and got people thinking about the idea of local politics. And if you'd like to contribute to these episodes and one question AMAs, just leave a comment on the most recent episode, and I will pull one for the next episode to answer. If there are multiple, then I'll choose one at random. And that'll be the end of this episode. So thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate the support that you all have given me throughout this process and my journey. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.